So I wondered to myself, after Trump's Gaza ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas, maybe the spotlight on Israel and Jews will quieten a bit, the obsession, all the talk in the media. But nope, no. It's increasing, and I think that's part of some kind of, there's clearly deeper, more spiritual, more cosmic reasons that the magnifying glass is very much not going away from Israel and the Jewish people. And I've spoken about that before, and I'll speak about that maybe later in this video. But what has happened just in the last few hours since I last recorded is there's two videos that I want to talk to you about today. We've been speaking a lot about rising forces of anti-Semitism and certainly anti-Israel hostility, and I don't really see much distinction between the two. If you're anti a country, not critical of Israel, but anti a country, there's not much distinction at all. And we've been seeing rises of it, and there's I think with these two videos that I want to show you, they're kind of both, I think, sort of feel like quite significant moments that show that this is not just, one or two bad actors, one or two troublemakers, people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, but actually when people start to dismiss it as they say, well, a lot of it's just online, it's bots, it's things like that. But when you see, in this case, I'll show you a clip of JD Vance taking a question from someone who's clearly deeply hostile to Jews in Israel and not really showing much moral firmness in response. I'm not saying he was agreeing with him, but he's clearly not taking this guy on in the way that others would, or certainly Charlie Kirk did historically. But also this clip of Kevin Roberts, who I actually have met personally, had a meeting with him maybe about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, who is the head of the Heritage Foundation, which is a foundation cornerstone think tank lobbying group in America that is based on conservative ideas and conservative principles, and has a lot of really good people in it, by the way. And I've always associated them, the Heritage Foundation, with that, with having a lot of good people there. I'm not saying I agree with everything they say or think or do, but just, just as I say, pushing for, I think, things that often can be, I think, pretty constructive in American political dialogue and progress. And so the fact that you have in these two videos here, Kevin Roberts basically saying he's very much welcomes Tucker Carlson and wants him in the conservative movement and doesn't feel the need to criticize anything he says necessarily. I want to show you what he says, because I think this also was a huge moment. Huge. And there's been a lot of reactions, and it's actually shown, it's exposed the divide that's growing. Because there are people on one side that say this is, really a bad moment. But there's lots of other people as well in the MAGA right-wing camp in America who welcome his statement. So I'm going to show you lots of people's commentary, lots of, comments people have had to say on all of this. And I think it's important that you follow me on this journey in this video, because we have to get moral clarity on this. So I'd like to start off with the JD Vance video. So let's just watch the clip first of all. This is from a Turning Point USA event.
Ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
Yeah, so
I think he meant persecution of the Jews, by the way. Also,
let's say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the president believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them. In that case, sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the president of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the president of the United States, they're not controlling this president of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East.
Now, let's just understand what this guy said. He's saying that Jews have been persecuting Christians. Have you studied history? And by the way, we've got a strong Christian audience on JTV, and God bless you guys. Honestly, so grateful for all of your support. But if you study the history, sadly, particularly in Europe, among some denominations, there's been almost 1 million Jews probably that have been killed in the name of Christianity. You don't see it the other way around. And he seems to have got into his head that Jews are somehow persecuting Christians. And then on top of that, he basically is saying that what Israel's done in Gaza is basically genocide, and it's unacceptable. Some questions. If you really believe that, and Israel has had the lowest combatant to non-combatant ratio in the history of modern urban warfare in Gaza, 60,000 killed, it looks like almost half of those were Hamas fighters. When we destroyed ISIS in Mosul, it was actually about 1 in 10 killed that were ISIS fighters. The rest were civilians. So 40,000 killed. 4,000 of those were ISIS fighters. And that was out of a population in Mosul of 400,000. That was 10% of the population killed. In Gaza, it's only been 2%. And yet Israel's doing a genocide. And what's Israel doing it in response to? An actual genocide from Hamas. ISIS just had plans of doing stuff in the West. They did the odd terror attack. But it was just a threat. Here, Hamas actually butchered. They had committed their own 9/11 to Israel. And when you say things like that Israel defending itself in such a surgically precise way, that's genocide, you're basically saying Israel doesn't have the right to life. That's what you're saying ultimately. And Vance, I'm not saying that Vance is agreeing with this guy necessarily. But, as Melanie Phillips put it, J.D. Vance was presented with an unambiguously anti-Semitic suggestion that Judaism openly supports the persecution of Christianity, which was linked to ethnic cleansing in Gaza. He needed to blow out the water. He needed to say it was a sick prejudice. He needed to say Jews had persecuted no one. He needed to say it was Christians who had historically persecuted and murdered hundreds of thousands of Jews. It's funny, by the way, they talk about Jews doing collective punishment. That is a form of collective punishment on the assumption that somehow the Jews or a Jew is responsible for the death of another Jew, Jesus, right? Seem to be ignoring the fact that the Romans were the ones that did it. But no, they name a whole church after the Romans. He needed to say there was no ethnic cleansing in Gaza. He didn't say any of that. Instead, he says the Gaza peace deal only happened because Trump put the screws on the Israelis. The Israelis didn't control this president. He left open the idea that Israelis controlled other presidents. Another lie. It's outright Jewish conspiracy theory, and this is likely to be the next US president. If Israel controls other US presidents, why did the Obama-Iran nuclear deal happen? It's just absurd. And again, I'm not saying Vance agrees with this guy, but he's not pushing back enough on what I think a moral stance would demand. As Ayn Reagan wrote, Vance assures TPUSA that the Jews don't control Trump, then brags that Trump coerced the Jews to accept the Gaza peace plan, quote unquote, because it's not a peace, it's a ceasefire. And don't worry, Trump is one president who will not allow the Jews to bully America. Why doesn't Vance condemn Carlson? The mystery has been solved. Max Nordau wrote, here's the thing about Vance. He's smart, he's observant, he's deliberate. He knows that Carlson is toxic to the electorate. He knows that Fuentes is mega toxic to the electorate. By the way, I don't know if he knows about Carlson. Unlike Carlson, because he interviewed Carlson, I think, recently on hosting Charlie Kirk's show. Unlike Carlson, he believes in his religion, loves America, dislikes third worldism, and isn't interested in fighting a Catholic evangelical civil war. Notably, VP Vance criticized Carlson's ridiculous prediction that taking out Iran's nuclear facilities would lead to a multi-100,000 troop regime change war for Israel. He didn't call him out by name because he's trying to play peacemaker, but he demonstrated his awareness that Carlson is as clueless as he is confident. He doesn't need to do a theatrical I disavow speech. A country that elected President Trump has no interest in pearl clutching. The formula is simple. ABC is our positive vision for the country. This is what we believe. Our detractors are wrong because XYZ. Nick Fuentes can issue threats and Kevin Roberts can gaslight, but JD Vance is the vice president so he can put them both in their place. Richard Hernandez said, eventually it needs to be Vance who takes on the Groypers if anyone's going to do so. It's not enough for him to say, look, Martha, of course I denounce that, but the reason the American people don't trust the mainstream media anymore, blah, blah, blah. Right? So he does need to take this fight to them, but will he? And has he got it in his heart? I don't know. Then there's the story of Kevin Roberts. Let's first just watch his statement that he put out there, and just for a bit of context, Heritage Foundation is clearly involved associated with Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker Carlson has for a while now been pushing not just anti-Israel, but anti-Semitic tropes and narratives. Maybe I'll do a separate video where I go through all of this one by one because people want to see evidence for this, but the evidence is everywhere. And Tucker always says, why are we so focused on Israel anyway? He's the one that talks about them nonstop and the Jews and pushes those kinds of tropes. And then the cherry on top was that he did an interview a few days ago with Nick Fuentes, who is a modern day Nazi, who is someone that really wants to persecute the Jews, get rid of them, certainly out of America. Many people will say, well, come on, you should be able to host whoever you want, free speech, let the best ideas win. Fine. Okay, you want to have that approach? Okay, have that approach. But then presumably, especially if you've got a massive platform, you should challenge their ideas, challenge them. And when Tucker Carlson interviewed Ted Cruz, who is very pro-Israel as a Christian, he did, in fact, grill him. He rarely does people who are pro-Israel Christians on his channel, but he did, in fairness, have Ted Cruz on, Senator Ted Cruz, a few months ago. And he grilled him, his arms were crossed, and he just challenged everything he said. But when it came to Nick Fuentes, watch the interview yourself. Very little pushback. And that's the point. And that's why he's come under threat. Charlie Kirk hated Fuentes because Fuentes, he said that to me himself, that he hates Fuentes. And the reason was because Fuentes represented a corruption, a perversion of the classic conservative American movement. It was identitarian, it was anti-Semitic, it was aggressive, just in a really negative way. It's unhealthy, based on resentment. And Charlie was even upset with Dinesh D'Souza for doing a debate on someone else's channel against Fuentes, where Dinesh was just trying to expose and denounce Fuentes and expose why he was misguided. But here you have Carlson, who, by the way, is a keynote speaker of Turning Point USA, on having Nick Fuentes come on his show, and as I say, really legitimizing him. Watch the interview for yourself, and you'll see. So as a result of this, Heritage was pushed, presumably under pressure, to maybe make some kind of statement about Carlson because of their close links to him, because he has shown that he's doing things that are, I think, pretty morally heinous. But this is what Kevin Roberts had to say. Let's watch.
I'll have more to say on this in the coming days. But today I want to be clear about one thing. Christians can critique the state of Israel without being anti-Semitic. And of course...
Okay. Sorry, and I won't cover every single moment in the video. That is a straw man. I'm so bored of this. When people say, we have a right to criticize Israel. No one on the pro-Israel side is saying you can't criticize Israel. We criticize ourselves more than anyone else. 2 Jews, 5 opinions. That's a straw man. And I find that quite sinister, actually, when people say this. Criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitism. What is the criticism of Israel that we're actually seeing? Calling the most surgically precise war in history a genocide. Questioning Israel's right to exist. Saying that you have the right of return, which means the dissolution of Israel as a Jewish state. The demonization, delegitimization, and double standards are not criticism. It is pulverizing Israel. It is trying to stop it from existing, delegitimizing its right to be, to live. And that, therefore, is anti-Semitism, and that is what we're seeing on the streets. That is what Jews and Israel and anyone of good faith and conscience are objecting to, saying this is abominable. You're denying the Jewish people's right to live. And then you turn around and say, look, criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. You've just totally strawmanned what the actual problem is. No Jew that's of good sense, no pro-Israel person of good sense is upset when someone says, I think that maybe Israel should rethink its education policy or rethink its this, that, or the other. Even the way it's conducting its war. But what we're seeing is a vehement, and with Tucker Carlson as well, where he says in his videos, he's saying it's genocide, it's ethnic cleansing, it's all these things. And it's the 3Ds. He is engaging in double standards, which means obsession with Israel over other countries that are far worse. Not saying that Israel's worse, but I'm saying if you want to even talk about war and bloodshed and all these things that he gets upset about, why are you starting with Israel? So double standards, delegitimization, and demonization. And that's the point. So already, total straw man, that's already raises a lot of red flags.
Of course, anti-Semitism should be condemned. My loyalty as a Christian...
Yeah, condemned, but he whitewashes over what is actual anti-Semitism.
And as an American is to Christ first and to America always.
Fair enough.
When it serves the interests of the United States to cooperate with Israel and other allies, we should do so, with partnerships on security, intelligence, and technology. But when it doesn't, conservatives should feel no obligation to reflexively support any foreign government, no matter how loud the pressure becomes from the globalist class or from their mouthpieces in Washington.
Now, no one's saying that America shouldn't do what's in its interests. I do, however, think that there is, of course, overwhelming, incredible strategic security intelligence interests in, and Israel's on the front lines of fighting all of this jihadism, that it serves America's interests. I do think it's also mentioning, especially as someone in heritage position, they should be saying this, there's a strong moral interest in standing with the one and only Jewish state. But he doesn't want to say that. Okay, fine. Fair enough. That's up to you. In the cosmic scheme of things, I think you make a big mistake when you turn against Israel, even if it might not, completely align with every single interest of yours. But that's something, that's a discussion one can have separately. But again, I think this is a bit of a straw manning, because people like Tucker Carlson and others are not saying any of this. They are engaging in those 3Ds, which are basically saying we need to shun total relations with Israel.
The Heritage Foundation didn't become the intellectual backbone of the conservative movement by canceling our own people or policing the consciences of Christians. And we won't start doing that now. We don't take direction from comments on X, though we are grateful for the robust free speech debate. We also don't take direction from members or donors, though we are inherently grateful for their support. And we're adding more every day. This is the robust debate we invite with our colleagues, our movement friends, our members, and the American public. We will always defend truth. We will always defend America, and we will always defend our friends against the slander of bad actors who serve someone else's agenda. That includes Tucker Carlson, who remains, and as I have said before, always will be a close friend of the Heritage Foundation. The venomous coalition attacking him are sowing division. Their attempt to cancel him will fail. Most importantly, the American people expect us to be focusing on our political adversaries on the left, not attacking our friends on the right. I disagree with, and even abhor, things that Nick Fuentes says. But canceling him is not the answer either. When we disagree with a person's thoughts and opinions, we challenge those ideas in debate. And we have seen success in this approach as we continue to dismantle the vile ideas of the left. As my friend Vice President Vance said last night, what I am not okay with is any country coming before the interest of American citizens, and it is important for all of us, assuming we are American citizens, to put the interest of our own country first. That's where our allegiance lies, and that's where it will stay.
So a lot of straw men in that argument once again. I mean, I find it quite funny. He talks about the venomous coalition sowing division. Couldn't you actually say that about Tucker Carlson and Fuentes and Candace Owens and others? Aren't they the ones that are sowing division? And this principle of saying, I'm not going to criticize anyone on my side. He said, I'll never distance myself from Tucker Carlson. By the way, what you do in your personal life is and friendships, that's Up to you. You can be friends with people you deeply disagree with. But if you are a massive platform, you're shaping policy, you have a duty to provide moral clarity and say what your views are on certain things, say where you disagree with someone. And if someone is causing huge amounts of division and maybe corrupting or perversing your political coalition and movement, you need to talk about that and deal with it. So it's strawman to say, cancelling and all these things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about giving moral clarity. And why is it that you should only express values against the left? But if someone on your own side says things that are morally abhorrent, well, that's too divisive. What's the point of being a political lobbying group or think tank or party that's trying to get values into policy and law and society if you're only prepared to deal with some that are vile and some that are not others? He said he thought Fuente's views are abhorrent. So why doesn't he want to confront them? I want to show you some responses to this rather than explain everything myself about the straw men in what he said, saying that it's, calling out Tucker Carlson would be a form of cancel culture or censorship. I think some people that I've found on X really say it best, so I just wanted to share it with you. Let's have a look. Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee, a great guy. He said, why do you call for anti-Semitism to be condemned? And then in the next breath, denounce the condemnation that's happening now as a divisive cancellation attempt being carried out by a venomous coalition. Please explain. So true. Will Chamberlain said, this statement sucks and it's traceable to a single sentence. The venomous coalition attacking Tucker are sowing division. That coalition didn't have a chummy, friendly podcast with a guy who talked about giving the death penalty to perfidious Jews and remarked themselves that they despised Christian Zionists. That was Tucker. And as I've discussed in previous posts, I can think of few things more divisive than that. That is simply a gratuitous insult to right-wing Jews and right-wing supporters of Israel of all stripes. There isn't a coalition of people attacking Tucker out of nowhere, just a bunch of normal right-wingers who are rightly outraged by Tucker's own insults. Nothing about rejecting cancel culture or even defending heritage. Continuing to associate with Tucker required calling fellow conservatives venomous. Max Nordell said, Kevin Roberts' statement would be reasonable in a world where Tucker Carlson isn't relentlessly attacking the right and Nick Fuentes isn't advocating for a Holocaust. It is a general endorsement of a dialogue debate when that's not really the issue at hand. Han Shaughnessy, another account, says, I must have missed it when Kevin Roberts and the Heritage Foundation came out in support of Ben Shapiro against venomous attacks from Tucker Carlson serving someone else's agenda. Oh wait, it's only when Tucker Carlson is called out for lying, promoting horrible people, slandering good people, and being a dishonest hack that the attack suddenly becomes venomous and in bad faith. It's so sad to see what has become of them. And I think, as I say, it's a really big deal, the head of the Heritage Foundation saying this. Pastor Dumisani Washington, who we had on our show a few weeks ago, great friend of Israel and the Jewish people, he said if Tucker Carlson were coming for black people the way he's coming for Jews, including platforming neo-Nazis, Mr. Roberts and the Heritage Foundation would have dropped him like a bad habit the next day. This is clear right-wing anti-Semitism, and good luck squaring conservative values with denying jihadist organizations like Hamas aren't even terrorists. Maybe you can open up a branch in Qatar. Former US ambassador to Israel David Friedman said, when the head of a leading conservative think tank publicly declares that he stands with a vile pundit who said just a few days ago, I detest Christian Zionists, for example, Billy Graham or Charlie Kirk, more than anyone, but defends Sharia law and considers Hamas a political organization, you know that the conservative movement has a problem. Under President Trump, Republicans are dominating the political discourse with common sense ideas and good policies. But the woke right, or woke Reich, as Netanyahu calls them, within the party, is insistent on destroying all that because it can't get the anti-Semitic virus out of their bloodstream. This is a major unforced error and self-inflicted wound that needs to be corrected fast. Dumisani also said, to my Christian and Jewish followers who still attend Turning Point events, I've seen many videos of audience discuss around Israel, pro or anti. I've yet to see one audience question about Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood, Sharia cities, the US still funding the Taliban, Christian genocide throughout the Arab Islamic world, etc. Please post if you have any, if they exist. Megan Mobb said, I say this as a Catholic woman who takes her faith, her history and her responsibility seriously. I will not stand with any movement that harbours anti-Semitism. Not in coded language, not in irony, not in just asking questions. The Groypers to the right and the socialist decolonizers to the left are drinking from the same poisoned well. Our founding fathers believed in free speech, and so do I. I do not want people deplatformed, but I also do not want bigots pedestalized. They are free to scream into the void, but no one should lend them credibility, legitimacy, or the dignity of silence. America has a unique and special relationship with Israel, one rooted not in just security, but in shared civilizational inheritance. This is precisely what I'm saying. By the way, you have to get, if you haven't already, Josh Hammer's book on Israel and civilization, which talks about all of this. Israel is unique in the story of Western civilization. A belief in human dignity, the rule of law, the sanctity of life, the moral weight of history. The Jewish people have been scapegoated, slaughtered, exiled, and blamed for the sins of every age. And every time the world asked afterward, how could this happen? Why didn't anyone speak sooner? Well, this is sooner. The Jews are our brothers and sisters in the story of God. Israel is a friend and ally, and in America, Jewish families deserve to live unafraid, unharassed, and unthreatened. I've got a bunch more comments to show you in a second, but before I do, I want to share with you a new trailer for our new documentary on the real Nakba, the untold story of the Jews expelled from Arab lands at the exact same time as the 1948 displacement, which also has all kinds of misconceptions. Have a watch, and I'll see you on the other side. We've all been told about the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe of 1948. Around 700,000 Arabs were displaced. But here's what you're rarely told. That displacement didn't come from some Jewish plan for genocide. It wasn't Israel's goal. It wasn't Israel's desire. It happened because Arab leaders launched a war of annihilation. They tried to wipe out the newborn Jewish state, vowing to drive the Jews into the sea. And in the chaos of that war, people fled. Many because their leaders told them to, promising they'd return after victory. But the term Nakba was originally used to describe the fact that the Arabs lost the war, not the displacement. Now the term describes the displacement of war used as a political weapon against Israel. But you know, there was another Nakba you haven't been told about. A catastrophe rooted not in the fog of war, but in the clear, deliberate desire for persecution and genocide. It happened at the very same time, and it led to even more displacement. Yet most of the world has never heard of it. Over 850,000 Jews, more than the number of displaced Arabs, were driven from their homes across the Arab world. Communities that had thrived for millennia were uprooted overnight. Families stripped of citizenship, of property, of dignity, assaulted, expelled, forced to flee with nothing but their faith. Why? Because they were Jews. Because Israel dared to exist. Because the Arab League openly orchestrated it, drafting plans in 1947 to freeze Jewish bank accounts, seize property, and intern Jews as enemy nationals. This is the real Nakba, a catastrophe born of pure anti-Semitism. In this JTV documentary, we'll journey country by country, from Baghdad to Cairo, from Sana'a to Tripoli, uncovering buried truths and survivor voices. And no, this isn't a tale of victimhood, it's a saga of endurance, courage, and triumph. Because the Jewish people didn't just survive this Nakba, we rebuilt, we came home. In Israel, our phoenix soared from the ashes. So buckle up and let's dive in. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description. So do check out that documentary. And now back to some more comments on Kevin Roberts. Robert Kellner said, "Let me be blunt," he's a lawyer advising on political law. "This is filled with code words and dog whistles directed at Jews and their alleged dual loyalty. That this vile content is coming from the Heritage Foundation in defense of the now openly anti-Jewish Tucker Carlson is an abomination. A once great conservative institution has fallen, and I fear what dominoes fall next." I have more to say on that in a second about what's to come, but I'll get to there in a sec. Khalid Hassan, who is a national security and foreign policy researcher, said, "Is it surprising that those who see themselves as crusaders fighting for Christ are abandoning Israel? Buckle up, it's going to get a lot worse." Batya Unga Sargon said, "It's so stunning to see the Heritage Foundation embrace the left's ridiculous view that Trump won because his supporters are Nazis or people who would rather you didn't condemn them. Trump won because millions of people who were Democrats thought he represented the common sense middle. And I hate to break it to you, but people like that don't vote for a side that thinks it's cancel culture to reject actual Hitler-loving racism, nor should they. A.G. Hamilton said, "So here's what I will say as a longtime fan of heritage. It's understandable that an organization like this would want to focus on fighting the left and avoid what they view as infighting on the right. I personally think the right should police its own side, especially from malicious actors who seek to align with the left to destroy conservative institutions, alliances, and social structures. But it's not mandatory for every group to do so. They can certainly just ignore the current fight. But there are two very clearly incompatible ideas in Kevin's video. On the one hand, Kevin argues we should confront bad ideas instead of just cancelling them. Then, less than a minute later, he refers to people confronting the bad ideas of Tucker Carlson and Fuentes as a venomous coalition and accuses them of sowing division. So which is it? Should we confront Tucker and debate him, call him out on his lies? Or does doing so make us venomous and sow division? More importantly, Tucker is causing the division. He has gone to war with people who disagree with him on the right and is actively allying with the far left, racial supremacists, and pro-CCP propagandists, see his recent guest list, and many others that Heritage has spent years opposing to do so. He spreads lies almost daily, not just about other countries, but also people on the right that disagree with him. Insisting that no one is allowed to notice this or fight back is nonsense. No one forced Tucker down this path, he chose it. The people Tucker is at war with, including conservative Jews and Christian Zionists, have been some of Heritage's biggest supporters over the years. They helped make Heritage into what it is today. So I'm fine if Heritage wants to focus on the left and stay out of the fight over the future of the right. But I've got a serious problem with Heritage instead throwing those people under the bus. Maybe that's not what the below video meant to do, but it can certainly be read that way. Dinesh D'Souza said some people on the right have hit back on a heck of a strategy to drive blacks like this guy, newcomers to our side, away from our side. Let's have a watch.
If these are the types of individuals that we have to click up with in the conservative movement, I'm good. No, I'm all the way good. See, the first and only reason I consider myself to be a conservative was because of the values that we hold. Therefore, when we start to compromise on those values by letting in a complete clown show, Exhibit A, Exhibit AA, I'm not even going to put them on B because they're the same. They're the same ilk. These two right here. Now, here's the thing. I do not believe in censorship unless it is self-censorship, personal censorship, which means I have the right to shut these clown shows up in my life. They don't have to shut up necessarily. They can continue to do whatever it is that they're doing out there in the old circus. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as me and mine, we serve the Lord. And neither of these have the Lord in them. I'm just going to tell y'all straight up.
This is the thing as well, I find it so stupid when people say, I'm not going to call out people on my side. Why? Why wouldn't you? You're not denouncing their whole being and saying, I counsel you from being involved in public life. But if you've got a big platform, they've got a big platform. You say, I'm against what they've just said. I think that's morally wrong. Why should you not do that? Oh, because it'll lead to infighting. Look, if there's a small policy disagreement or whatever, or a personal feud, fine. If you want to deal with it, deal with it off air. But the whole point of political discussion and debate and advocacy is to have the conversation of ideas. And isn't the whole point primarily about trying to get values across? Why is it, but if there's bad values on my side, I shouldn't call that out? I'd say even more so, to make sure that the coalition you're building is pushing something that is based on morality and values. I've never understood people that look at politics just as football teams, soccer teams, where it's like, my side has to win. No, it's about what's right and wrong. If I was in a group, a political party, religious grouping, whatever it is, and there were people there that were leading figures and they were doing all kinds of bad things or promoting bad values, I wouldn't care that they were on my own side or not. I would feel the need to deal with it. Because that's what it's meant to be about. It's so shallow otherwise. Just to think about, well, my team has to win. Claire Lehman said, between Mamdani's rise in the Democratic Party and the most popular news podcast in the country normalizing Nazism, I would be a tad nervous to be Jewish in America. Not that it's much better anywhere else. Well, look, I want to share with you what Ted Cruz had to say about that, because now really is a time for choosing. For non-Jews, This is a time for choosing, I think. And Jews, non-Jews don't have to be concerned with Jewish issues all the time. Absolutely not. But they need to be able to have moral clarity, certainly when they're confronted with it among their leading lights of political causes and media and all of that. It's important that they have moral clarity. As countries, where are they going to stand? You cannot deny Israel's played a fundamental role in the story of Western morality, people's relationship with the God of Abraham. So your relationship with Israel and the Jewish people, it's tied to the very destiny of the world. It does matter. It does matter. I want to show you Senator Ted Cruz's message talking about this just now. And then I want to have a message also for Jewish people as well who are watching this.
And now is a time for choosing. Now is a time for courage. If you sit there and nod adoringly while someone tells you that Winston Churchill was the villain of World War II, if you sit there and nod while someone says there's a very good argument America should have intervened on behalf of Nazi Germany in World War II, if you sit there with someone who says Adolf Hitler was very, very cool, and that their mission is to combat and defeat global Jewry, and you say nothing, then you are a coward, and you are complicit in that evil. And now is a time.
He's always been a great, great friend of Israel and the Jewish people, Ted Cruz. So it's really a time for choosing, precisely as he said. That's actually what I felt. The first thing I felt in my heart in the days after the shock of October 7th had set in. The question is not what will be Israel's fate. Israel's fate is glorious. We know how history will reach its conclusion, crescendo, with the Messianic era. The question is, how are the nations of the world going to choose to act with the Jewish people? Some, throughout history, have chosen a very negative approach to the Jewish people. What are they going to choose now? With the vision or aerial view of history to look back on. What are they going to choose at this time now? For the Jewish people, it seems so clear to me that what's happening is God is making a havdalah, a separation between the Jewish people and the world. We thought there were certain political groups and parties and coalitions that we could be at home in. And I'm not saying there aren't plenty of people who will be in all those kinds of different political coalitions and groupings that will be aligned with the Jewish people and, want the best and are good people. But we're seeing cracks in the actual structures themselves when it comes to widespread alignment with Jews. And I think that's because we're being reminded. Maybe this is a necessary part of the development of history, once again, that the Jews are reminded that our home ultimately is not in any other political party or grouping or even nation. Our home, our political, spiritual, religious home, is in our God, the God of Israel, is in our Torah, is in the land of Israel. That's where we take refuge and strength. And by the way, that actually is what will lead to far greater respect and even admiration from the world when we state that and explain that unapologetically. The paradigm that I use, that I learned from Rabbi Manis Friedman, that I think is so helpful, is to understand that the Jewish people are meant to be the teacher in the global classroom of divine morality. So of course we're going to be treated different if you're the teacher. And when the teacher tries to pretend to be like the student will walk all over the teacher. As much as the teacher wants to fit in with all the other students, they will keep insisting you're not like us and treat them differently with double standards. So we shouldn't be scared by this. We should just be confident in our role. Teachers always say, first comes respect, then comes the love. First, you need to assert yourself, explain who you are. Draw our strength and our confidence in the creator of the universe, that he willed us here into this position for a reason. He's not letting go of that. And he's going to assure our success because this is the very destiny of the world. So that's what I see happening. And when I think about it now, actually, it makes sense. It makes sense that this has happened. I'm not saying everyone's going to turn on the Jews. Far from it. Far from it. We have so much support and love. And for those who don't, a lot of it's just ignorance. So I think part of this is happening so that we as a Jewish people can start to just become an individual entity again, disassociated from any other political or ideological attachments. So we can be who we're always meant to be, a light to the nations. And speaking of the ultimate destiny of the world, you can watch our new documentary on Moshiach, the Jewish Messiah, the messianic vision for the world. Here's the trailer, and if you want to watch the full thing, you can just click below in the video description. For thousands of years, the Jewish people have carried a promise that history is not a random cycle, that suffering and darkness and exile are not the end of the story, that one day the world will be redeemed and the Messiah, the Moshiach in Hebrew, will come. But what does that actually mean? Who is Moshiach? When will he come? How will we know he's real? Why would God design a world that waits so long for redemption in the first place? And what will life feel like after he comes? With AI and machines beginning to replace work, maybe we're already catching a glimpse. But then what will we do with our days? The prophet spoke of that world long ago. In this groundbreaking JTV Plus documentary, we uncover the truth about the Jewish vision of the Messiah, who he is, why it matters, and why his coming could be closer than you think. Join us as we reveal the truth about history's most anticipated figure. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.